On social issues. As I told you earlier on, we shall focus on childhood pregnancies, but that comes on later on. Right now, we want to focus on Kenya's aging population. Are we even ready for a population that is growing older and older year after year? Have we set up the right structures to ensure that they are taken care of? Now, we will be having later on Drusus Demise, who is the founder of Volunteers for Elderly in Need in Kenya, joining us at our I&M studio later on. But now we have via Zoom Carol Agengo of Help Age Kenya. And last but not least, we have Dr. Joyce Mutinda, the chairperson of the National Gender and Equality Commission. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Now, let's start off with some statistics. According to the World Health Organization and KNBC Census 2019, between 2015 and 2020, the proportion of the world's population over 60 years nearly doubled from 12% all the way to 12%. By 2020, the number of people aged 60 years and older will outnumber the number of children younger than 5 years. And then in 2050, 80% of older people will be living in low and middle income countries. Life expectancy in 1999 was at 52.4 years, and 20 years later, in 2019, it had risen all the way to 65.4 years. Kenyan urban population, aged 90 and above, is currently at 3,103 males and 7,541 females. Now, this paints a picture of a growing, country, a country that is aging, and that brings to fore the question: is Kenya ready to take care of its aging society? I'll pose that one to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me in studio this morning. I want to start by saying the Kenyan statistics.
Yes.
Not just the global. The Kenyan statistics. In 1989, according to our census, there were only 1 million Kenyans who were 60 and above. In 2009, we were 1.9. I'm saying we were because I may be part of that group. Now, fortunately, in 2019, we are 2.7 million, which means steadily growing, just the way the world is growing. Of this, 55% are women, while 45% are men. So we have many more women in that aging group. And then we are asking, is Kenya ready? I want to say yes and no, because even the world is not ready. Kenya is ready insofar as policy is concerned. We already have a policy in place. To be precise, this is the older members of society, the national policy, which was put in place way back. We would be saying way back in 2009. That is when this policy came into being. For quite a number of people, this policy, of course, having come into being in 2009, then it meant it would not be in line with our current Constitution 2010. So this policy has been looked into and reviewed. So the edition we have is 2014. So in matters policy, sessional paper, our cabinet, our executive, they are ready for this population. Now, when it comes to social protection, as a bigger chunk of that, we already have the Kenya National Social Protection Policy of 2011, which is in line with our Constitution. But this takes care of not only the aging, but also the vulnerable groups. And the aging are part of the vulnerable groups. But then in matters legislation, are we ready? Constitution, yes. We already have our description of who the other members are. 60 and above, Article 260 of our Constitution.
I'll pause you right there and try and bring in our other guest who's joining us via Zoom. Now, Carol, what is this readiness supposed to look like at what is this readiness supposed to look like at the grassroots level when it comes to, I do understand that we have lost our guest, so we'll just continue with what you were saying for a while.
I was talking of legislation, and I said the Constitution is there. We have the description of order members. We also have Article 57 in the Constitution, saying what we should do about the older members of society. Now, coming down, that is where the problem lies. We do not have specific piece of legislation done by our parliament.
And this is the major challenge in implementation.
Yes, so we have a bill, a Senate bill, that was done in 2018. This bill is yet to see the light of the day. It has not been signed yet. And that is where the problem is, I would say. So at this point in time, allow me just to urge our parliamentarians,
for sure,
before they go to this electioneering business, please let them pass this legislation so that it can be signed by His Excellency the President, so that the other members of society have a legislation that takes care of their needs.
Yes.
I know somebody is going to talk of Social Assistance Act of 2013.
Yes.
But this one takes care of a bigger chunk because it only talks of Inua Jamii and the rest of it is other vulnerable groups. So that one I wouldn't say is taking care of our other members of society.
Absolutely.
But I want to laud our government because of the international instruments. We now have the protocol to the Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of the other members of society or the older persons in Africa. This protocol we have been chasing. As National Gender and Equality Commission, we have been chasing it, I would say that, since 2019. But I'm very happy now it has been signed and we are moving towards ratification. And once it is done, it will help us. I know there is no international convention. And we, being members of what is called by the United Nations, the UN open-ended working group on aging, which was established in 2010, and we have been participating in this. We are still pushing, like the rest of the world, to have a convention for other members of society. Just like we have conventions, UN conventions for children, for persons with disability, we want one for other members. Because, as you said earlier on, the world is aging.
The world is aging, and we need to be ready to take care of the needs of these people in society. Carol, I do believe you're back with us. Now, my question to you earlier on was that what would these ratifications and these legislations and implementation of policy look like at the grassroots level? In other words, I'm asking you, what are the actual needs of the elderly that and some of the challenges they're facing, minus said laws that would actually help them?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. So thank you very much. And as my colleague has said, the policy framework is good in terms of the policies, and also Kenya is moving towards the ratification of the AU protocol on the rights of old people. And I think maybe just to say that should be sped up. The level or the rate of ratification is very, very slow for that protocol. For it to enter into force, we need 15 members to ratify. We're currently at 3. So even if Kenya ratifies now, it still will not enter into force. But I think Kenya can lead by example by ratifying that protocol. And so that's a call that I'll make up front already. But in terms of the social needs of older people, I think what's on the ground is very different, because even if we have those policies, if we look at the reality in terms of the social protection of older people, in terms of the rights, the extent to which their rights are protected, the levels of violence, abuse, and neglect targeted at older people, and also just how society views older people. I think there's a very big disconnect between the policies and the practice, and a lot needs to be done. So we have to
what would you attribute that disconnect to? Because these are people living with us who should be aware of their needs, and therefore the fact that some of the policy is not entirely trickling down to the point where they feel the support and the cushioning of their government. Carol?
The problem,
yes,
the problem that exists, one, is how we view old age. Old age is not seen as a productive point of life. old age is almost seen as a place of vulnerability, absolute vulnerability. Older people are seen as victims rather than members of society. It is true, older people are members of society. We all age and we're going to become, if God grants us, become old, but we do not prepare for old age. It's as if old age happens on us. Take something like retirement or even how pensions are handled. It's almost as if it is a problem. Yet we know that if we do not take care of that group of people who are age 60 and above, then we are not taking advantage of the resourcefulness that they have. The fact that a person retires from active employment does not mean that they're no longer productive. We're not tapping into the resource that sits with older people.
Yes.
So we send them back into the village, and even if, let's take the basic example of subsistence farming, which a lot of us engage in. We have a little farm in the village, and you want your parents to take care of that farm while you're in the city earning a living. But what happens is that you do not even empower your parents to effectively take care of that little farm. So you've got a farm hand, you've got workers, but you're not giving your parents the possibility to engage effectively in that process, to make decisions around that little farm that is giving them end-use subsistence. So what happens? They become channels of money. They become conduits. You send money for them to pay the worker. You send money for them to buy fertilizer or whatever, but you're not engaging them in the productivity of that land that they're actually taking care of on a day-to-day basis. So that's a typical example of something that happens all the time. The other thing, if we look at it now from the bigger perspective, how is our health system preparing for old age?
Absolutely.
Are we taking care of the diseases that come with age? Are we preparing our health systems to take care of it? We've had cases of people in far-flung counties who go to the clinic, but they're not able to get even blood pressure medicine. And we know that older people have diabetes, blood pressure, eyesight problems. But you go to the villages where they are sent to retire, sent to after retirement,
Yes.
but the health system, they're not able to take care of them. So what happens? In the city, you keep bringing your parents back and forth if you're able to afford it. That is poor management of the resources, because even for you as an individual, if the health center in the village where your parents are was able to take care of their needs there, you don't have to shuttle them back and forth. So that's money and time wasted. If you look at something like our roads, right now we're building the expressway. We're building roads everywhere. We have buildings. To what extent are those buildings going to be able to take care of people who have challenges with mobility?
Yes,
and this comes a lot with old age.
Yes,
so we are not looking at old age as a society in practical terms.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carol, for that very analytical view of how we are handling the aging community, population of our country. Now, Dr. Mutinda, then that brings in the question, where do the elderly fit in Kenya's society? You've talked about legislation that is needed. What would it take? Aside from you making an appeal to parliamentarians, what would it take? Is it lobbying? What would it take to get us there?
Thank you very much for that question. What will it take for us to have this legislation?
Yes.
It will take the goodwill of our parliamentarians. And we all remember that these are people who represent us. They represent each one of us from the grassroots. So I would call upon the Kenyans, talk to your MCA, talk to your MP, and talk to your senator, so that they can move. Because if they don't move, there is nothing that His Excellency the President can do. He will only sign at the end when that law comes. And this is the law that will put in place what the medical care should look like, how we should involve these other members of society. Because even in the very protocol that is going to be ratified by Kenya, that is Africa-wide. When we talk of the Committee of the Aging, the open-ended Committee of UN, that is worldwide. And the world is still grappling.
For sure.
In Kenya, I wouldn't want us to grapple. Let every Kenyan talk to their MP, their MCA, their representative, so that this act comes into being. Now, having talked about this act coming into being, where do these people fit? We are losing it. These are people who have a wealth of knowledge in matters culture. They have the skills. They even know our cultural values and beliefs, and they are the people who are the custodians. Some of the communities have done very well. I want to laud the Meru, for example, for the Anjurinjeke, the Samburu, for the Samburu Council of Elders. What about the other communities? What are they doing?
Sure.
We need to preserve our culture. Otherwise, we will be lost in the world. Now, this is what we pass from generation to generation. And one of the issues that I've looked at, and which I think we are losing as a nation, is alternative dispute resolution.
Right.
Traditionally, there was no court. There was no court of law. It was court of the elders. Now, we seem at the moment to think men are the elders. Let's remember, women are more in that group. And therefore, we need to have groups of the two or a mix of the two, because that is what the society is. That is what the family unit is all about. These are the people who will determine the dispute. It doesn't take long. Go to court, God forbid, and you want divorce. It may take 4 years. If you go to the wazee, or to the council of elders, believe you me, the goats and the chicken and what you are supposed to do will be done, and with a lot of speed, and that will be dealt with. Traditionally, you don't hear of a man waking up to go and murder his wife, a wife waking up to go and murder the husband, because the wazees dealt with it instantly, instant justice. There was no delay of justice. So that is something we are missing. We need to involve the wazees in alternative dispute resolution, wholly, because they have the time, they have the experience, they have the cultural values and beliefs. We have even lost a lot in terms of medicine. They know the medicinal trees. We are even, depleting the forests. But the wazees know which tree treats which animal or treats which human being ailment. Now, that's another area we are missing. Now, what can we do about this? The CBC, the curriculum, the new curriculum. Can we involve the wazees in storytelling?
Absolutely.
So that storytelling, and when it is put in writing, if we must modernize, when it is recorded by you in the studio or wherever, then it is passed on to the next generation. So there is a place for the older members of society in this country.
Okay, you are talking about productivity. It's a question of how we view them. It's a lot of people view the elderly as vulnerable, and therefore they have nothing to contribute, and even in some extreme cases a burden. But that's not it. The elderly are actually having a lot that they can contribute, but this needs to be facilitated in our community. Now, joining us on phone is Rusos Demis, founder of Volunteers for Elders in Need in Kenya. Thank you so much for making the time to join us and have this conversation about the value and the fact that the elderly can be productive in our society, and at the same time they need facilitation both from government and the society to ensure that they are still a valuable part of our society and not just dying away in the recesses of our remote areas of the country. Now, speak to us about some of the challenges that you have witnessed in your capacity, as well as what needs to be done to ensure that they are helped in every aspect.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me into this discussion. So in our capacity in dealing with the elderly people in our organization of Volunteers for the Elderly in Need, it is sure enough that the elderly people are combating different kinds of challenges. Like one of the most common challenges that we've seen that most of the elderly are combating is loneliness. So it's loneliness in the sense that you find that most of the time the elderly people are left. Let's say an elderly is in Nairobi. So the household members leave very early in the morning. They're going for work and all that kind of thing. And then the whole day they will be left alone. Or sometimes you find even the caregivers that they have are people that they don't really connect with deeply. So they're just there maybe in person, but there's no that kind of connection. So loneliness is one of the biggest challenges that most elderly people are facing across the country. And then the other thing that the elderly people are really facing is that they feel left out in most of the activities that are happening. For example, you find that, let's say if somebody grows old, most of the decisions are maybe taken by the caregiver. And so sometimes there's no consultation that is done to them. So sometimes they really feel that they're left out, and maybe they even feel that sometimes they don't matter that much. So that's also a challenge that we've really seen with most of the elderly people that we've connected with, we've spent some time with, and we feel it's really a big challenge that they are facing, but mostly it's silently. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Demise, could you point to us, because you speak of loneliness and a feeling of not being needed in society, or having people that you can actually talk to and just people on your own level. Does this impact also their mental health? What is the state of mental health among the elderly in Kenya's society?
Okay, sure. Yeah, this really affects them mentally. Because you understand that all the people, these are people who have, shaped the society the way it is up to now. These are the people, for example, that has brought the society to where it is. So for an example is, for example, if a key decision is done and these people are not consulted for whatever reason, when they really come to terms that maybe something happened without their consultation, they really feel that they don't count. And this kind of thought goes to them, and most of the time you will find that maybe they overthink or they start having some kind of worries, and this kind of emotional changes directly impact them even health-wise. For example, you find that the moment they are stressed, maybe the blood sugar goes high or the pressure goes high. So it is really affecting them psychologically, and even it translates to a physical effect.
It's quite important that you're pointing that out, because often when we talk about mental health, the conversation is usually about young people, mental health among young people, the stresses of life. But then when you get up there, you're still experiencing those stresses and perhaps not the luxury of medical attention that you probably do need when it comes to the issues such as depression or just stress, because it's directly connected to physical health. Now, Carol, what do you make of that situation? There are certain needs that are not necessarily physical, they're not necessarily productivity related, but still very important for the elderly. Something such as loneliness. Who would think about that? But it's a key, because probably most of their friends have passed on. They're now alone. Speak to that need and what can be done to help them.
Yes, the issue of mental well-being for older persons is something that is often neglected. But if you look at some of the diseases that afflict older persons, such as dementia or even Alzheimer's diseases or Parkinson's disease, yes, these are diseases that are hardly spoken to. Even in the general awareness, even as we speak about mental health, like you mentioned, the focus is on younger people. And it is true, there's a challenge around mental health that is right now affecting younger people and the society as a whole. But I think we need to look at some of the diseases based on the context and how they affect the different cultures of society. Unfortunately, the other challenge around mental health for older persons is that it is always conflated with ageism. And so you will find that when an older person it's conflated around ageist attitude. So an older person may be suffering from an illness, whether it's physical or mental, but because of the ageist attitudes, you find they're pushed to the periphery. So we've had cases of older persons being declared witches or wizards if they're men, We've seen that in counties such as Kilifi or even in Kisii, and across Africa it's very common, because then they're seen to be a bother, but there's also some underlying issues around accessing their property, and so you're pushed to the periphery so that then your property can be accessed. And it could be because you are exhibiting signs of a mental illness, or it could even be physical. You have your bones are no longer as strong as they were before, and so you're seen to be different from the society.
All
so
right,
ageism
Carol.
is a big problem.
Yes, the ageism, because in some areas it is normalized, it's just seen as, well, the elderly behave like this and it's okay, yet they need treatment. On the other side, they might actually be it might be rationalized away as witchcraft and other things, and perhaps the agenda, the negative agenda some people might have of wanting maybe land or whatever property you have. There's so much to talk about the elderly, and we are going to take a short break and come back with more and dig deeper and speak about it from a solution perspective. What can we do to ensure that the elderly in our society are well taken care of? Do stay tuned.